Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is Chris Crawley. Chris is the Chief Financial Officer at Hoffman Hospitality Group, a family-owned restaurant company based in Signal Hill, California. Established in 1951, Hoffman Hospitality owns and operates popular dining concepts like Hoff's Hut, Lucille's Smokehouse Barbecue, and Saint and Second. Their mission is to deliver great food with friendly service in comfortable settings, creating memorable experiences for their guests. Under Chris's financial guidance, the group has continued to flourish while upholding its proud, decades-long tradition. Chris has extensive financial and accounting experience across public and private industries. He has served in senior roles at organizations like Moxie Management Group and Sizzler USA. With an MBA in finance from the University of Arizona Global Campus and a business economics degree from UC Santa Barbara, Chris brings a wealth of knowledge to his current position. He is also passionate about supporting others, including college athletes transitioning into business roles. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. One recent client was able to add over $900 per employee per year in extra cash flow by implementing one of our innovative programs. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefitsagency.com. All right, back to our guest today, the CFO of Hoffman Hospitality Group, Chris Crawley. I appreciate you making the time to share your story today.
Oh, thank you very much, Anthony. I appreciate you for actually having me on to tell my story.
All right, let's jump in, Chris. So as a former Division I baseball player at UC Santa Barbara, what influence did your athletic career have on your professional career path and success?
Oh, goodness. Well, good question right off the bat. Well, a tremendous amount of influence. Obviously, yes, I was fortunate to be able to play Division I college baseball at UC Santa Barbara. But there was a lot of work that was put into that even before getting to the collegiate level. Sports was it was a catalyst for really family time early on, but definitely an influence from a competitive standpoint in being able to push myself forward. Probably it was around just before high school, entering high school, it was a goal of mine at that point to play collegiate sports, and specifically baseball. That was a sport I excelled in as a child, and fortunate for me, I was able to fulfill that dream. And Coach Bob Bronsema there at UC Santa Barbara saw something in me and recruited me to play at Santa Barbara quite some time ago in the mid 90s.
So when you were coming into high school and you sort of had this dream, did it seem attainable to you, or did it seem like it was something just so far out there?
So it was interesting. I was actually coached by my father for many years, and there was one point where actually it was when I went to playing on a team, a little league team that was highly competitive, and I ran into adversity there. It was difficult. When I was coached under my dad, he put me in places where I could succeed. I then had to go into another level. In the adversity, at first I wanted to quit. I literally there was doubt. I did not know if I could play at that level. But when I did that, he made me make the decision. He forced me to go sit down with my little league coach at that time and literally tell him, you know what, I want to hang this up and quit. And I couldn't do it. I at that point, that was when I was 10, 11 years old. I couldn't do it. But it was interesting for my dad to actually put the onus on myself to say, hey, do I really want to walk away from this? Because I actually enjoyed playing the sport. From that point forward, when I made that decision that, you know what, I'm going to stick with this, I made that decision to say, hey, let's see it all the way through. And at that point, I understood there was high school, there was college. I even put it in my mind, potentially playing, second base for the Dodgers or so. But so it was very early on that I did feel or have at least have the confidence after not having the confidence to play at a high level.
So a decision as a 10 or 11-year-old there, it's interesting that your dad put that decision in your lap. And the way that you talk through the story, it seems like everything worked out the way that it should. I'm a parent of a boy that, that's about that same age. And I struggle with decisions like that. Like, I want him to want to do it. Right. But I also know that sometimes, whether we're kids or adults, we could use a little kick, kind of stay on track to work harder, to achieve something, to work through the hard times. Do you look back on that and have appreciation for the way that your dad handled it? And would you do it the same way with your own kids?
Well, absolutely. To answer the question, do I look back and show appreciation for how my father helped handle that? Absolutely. It was a little bit different era back then, where it was a sink or swim era, and my dad put me in a position where I had to make the decision, and I look at that, and it was very healthy, and I'm sure as we go along in our conversation, you'll see how it actually influenced a lot of how I approach life, how I approach work and business as well. You have to be responsible for decisions. It taught me at an early age that I had to think through things. Is this something I really want to let go? And that was a big decision for a 10 or 11-year-old at that time. I happen to have an 11-year-old right now, and I struggle because I want to take that approach sometimes, but I do feel in this maybe more complex situation that he has today, or at least what I feel he has. Sometimes I do give him a nudge, but I do find myself kind of on the fence with my 11-year-old. But as we've gotten into youth sports and everything, I'm more so on that parent that's going to try to put that child into the fire to help them actually gain confidence versus holding their hand and kind of taking them to the answer.
So you're 10 or 11, and your father says, if you want to quit, you have to go tell your coach. And you couldn't do that. Could you not do that because it was just a hard conversation to have with your coach? Or was it more of this competitive spirit sort of lit inside of you, and you're like, no, I got this. I'm going to figure it out?
It probably has a little sprinkling of everything in it. So it's so funny, Anthony, as I can go back to the night before. So I actually did sit down with my coach. My dad took me up early before a practice. I was thinking about it in bed, and there was just something inside that was like, why quit? Because and even at that time I was processing, because this is hard, it's difficult. And so when I spoke with my coach, he obviously encouraged me. But at the end of that conversation, and I did have every intention to actually tell my coach at that time I was no longer going to play for his team. But once I began having that discussion and all of these thoughts filtered through my mind, I was like, you know what, I would be cutting myself short by not seeing something through. So part of it too, that was the challenge at that point. That was the competitiveness as well, even within myself, to see something through at least. And I think, having that has stuck with me through my entire life.
So let's fast forward. Go through high school. You make a Division I team. You get recruited to play at UC Santa Barbara. You have, some aspirations, like I'm sure everybody who plays at that level. Hey, could I make it to the next level? At the same time, though, I'm going to put words in your mouth here. You're still studying. You're coming up with the backup plan, right? What attracted you to study economics and finance at this
Yep.
stage?
So my household coming up, both my mother and father, were huge influences to both me and my siblings. I had two younger sisters. Education was highly stressed in our household. So I attended UC Santa Barbara, yes, but I have two younger sisters. One attended Stanford, the other one went to University of Southern California. So it was there was competition in our home academically. So that's why I'm kind of looked at it. UC Santa Barbara, it's not a terrible, terrible school at all. However, there was definitely a level of stress that we had to ensure that we were doing the right things academically. My father actually he ran a recruiting firm in Los Angeles, which specialized in finance, accounting, and technology. So the business economics and going in that direction, I can't claim that that was fully my decision making. I was definitely tasked to go that route and influenced by my parents. I look back at that, and at the time, I didn't really think much of it. I was so enthralled with sports, and it just was kind of part of the program. And I look back at it, and it definitely paid off. It was definitely a discipline, just as my parents would talk to me about, hey, make sure you're thinking about doing something else besides sports. And so they gave me a very good basis, an understanding of what I want to do. Because, like I said, in my mind, even going to college, I was going to play second base for the Los Angeles Dodgers at some point. So, but obviously, I had very good structure at home in giving me a balance of ensuring that I took care of the academic side as well as the athletic side.
At what point did you realize that you were not going to have a professional career in sports, and what was that moment of understanding like?
It came, believe it or not, actually early on. So probably during, I would say, my sophomore year. So it was interesting. My sports career through high school was things came easy. It was I did well. When I got to college and stepped into to a different level of competition, I realized at that point my 5'10", 160-pound frame didn't necessarily hold up to the test. I was getting everything I could out of it, and so I knew right away, actually, in my sophomore year, because I actually got a chance to play with a couple of guys who played in the major leagues, and I saw their ability and their dedication. Michael Young was someone who actually influenced me when I was at UC Santa Barbara. He had a great career with the Texas Rangers, but his ethic and true passion and love for the game, that was something that I realized that I didn't have all of that. I didn't work as hard as necessary to get there, and it wasn't the physical part. It's the mental part of everything. I also played with another gentleman named Freddie Sanchez. We were on a traveling team, and it'd be 1 o'clock in the morning before we're getting ready to play a game, and he's practicing his swing. I'm like, what are you doing? But it was that dedication that I learned from those guys. And so I realized that, to go to the professional levels, it was more than just the physical, it was mental as well. So at that point, and also I did incur injuries throughout my career, which definitely set me back. And it right away, I knew I had to figure out, okay, what else am I going to do while I'm still competing in playing sports? And that was a difficult balance, because you have to realize that you know what, you think you're good, but there's a lot of competition out there. And so it took me a bit, but I was able to accept that. And I think that was important for me to be able to also then transition into a normal student because I took an extra year there at Santa Barbara, and then eventually to transition into a life where I had to go to work and sit behind a desk. So there's a big transition in that.
You know, in my own experience and talking with other business leaders, making those transitions can be really challenging, much more challenging than just saying, "Oh, it was hard." And tell me if this rings true for you, Chris. Because you had identified as a baseball player, as an athlete for so long, right? You were doing this as in when you were a little kid, you were doing this in junior high, high school. Now you're playing Division I college ball. You got a scholarship. Like this is the trajectory that you're on, and then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, that part of who I thought I was has to morph into something else. Was this like I don't know, kind of a couple weeks and you got over it, or was it a bit more destabilizing than that?
Oh, this was years. This is years to get through that. Obviously, like I said, my parents stressed education, so I had to fulfill that task and finish that side. Even with that, after knowing, if it wasn't for my parents pushing me or so and giving me that motivation, it would have been a difficult transition. It's like, you've lost your dream. What are you going to school for now? But even as I transitioned into, the first job I took was, actually there was a local CPA firm in Santa Barbara that hired me on, and I actually did the accounting for tennis clubs that they had managed throughout the Central Coast there. And even during that time, it was a transition for me because I was even thinking to myself, this is not the excitement of being a professional, being an athlete in general. This is where you come to work every single day. You're working on reconciliations, and it was just a almost kind of a mundane task that really was not inspiring me day in and day out, because I just felt like I was kind of just punching the clock or so. So I had to then get inspired and do other things. And so that's actually what led me into my next job. One of the partners there, he reached out to a firm in Florida, and I went to go work for a CPA firm as an auditor in Florida. And that actually began to get me somewhat excited because, I was traveling as an auditor. I was learning about, other companies, how business works. But in the same regard, too, I was now kind of fighting this piece because I was an introvert at that point. I was an athlete, but now I'm thrusted into the business world. I had to kind of find my place there. What all I knew was just get a job done, essentially, work hard and get the job done. So, but I did not really understand how to maneuver through essentially corporate America, or even really at that point know what I wanted to do. It wasn't that I necessarily wanted to be a CPA or go down the accounting route. But when I was auditing, the trigger really that got me or where I was inspired was really just learning about the businesses that I would perform audits on, understanding how they function, learning the business processes, in interacting with the high level executive folks there and understanding their strategy. And even at that time, I remember thinking to myself, do I agree or disagree with some of the strategy? And that became kind of the catalyst for me to really start to maneuver in my career and get serious about my career.
So, how can we sort of encapsulate that into advice for listeners who are thinking, I'm not really sure where my career is going. I don't know what to do, where to find sort of the joy and the hope and the excitement and the inspiration for it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I would suggest, and I was there, you have to get out of the doldrums of kind of thinking to yourself, is this the best it gets? Or, this negative energy. I would come to work sometimes with a negative thought process or so because, this wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So, trying to find the passions. I mean, it's work. It's work, but what drives you, and then what can you work towards to drive you? So one of the things, as I mentioned before, too, is very early on in my career, as an auditor, you would understand business processes and look at strategy, and I was like, gosh, well, we could do this a little bit better, maybe if that changes. And so what I learned early on too is that I did like to be in a place where I could add suggestion or bring a different type of thought process, and so that led me onto a path of thinking, okay, well, how do I get into that role? As a staff auditor, a staff accountant, you're basically in the weeds and just doing that. How can I get strategic and really be able to drive decision making in organizations? And so that's kind of an area, for me, what helped is trying to put the negative thought aside of, oh, this is a job, and really trying to figure out what is best or what's positive here or what actually motivates me, and take that focus and try to build upon that.
So kind of putting everything that you had into it. How can I put myself fully into this experience so that I can get the most out of it in return? How can I, the more that I invest, the more that I'm going to get back, the more that I can better myself and start setting new goals for, okay, I'm just here, but I can see all these other people, in these different positions. How can I get to that place?
Absolutely. And for listeners, that didn't come easy either, because I didn't necessarily know the answers on how to do that. So what I tried to do is really excel in whatever my task was, whether I was working in a senior auditor's capacity or even just an accounting manager's capacity. It was, all I knew was get my task done and do it very, very well, so that you would get at least praise or appreciation of that. So then you could go on to the next. But I found over time and in my career, just doing that was not enough. I think, and if one looks in my resume, I spent almost 10 years at the controller level. And what I did not understand, and what it took me a long time, and actually there was a book that I read. It was called How to Talk to Anyone. It was written by Paul Newcomer. And what this did is it allowed me to break down the walls that I had and be open, being able to network, to talk with people, to communicate, to really understand how a team may function, what other people's needs are, versus me just focused on getting tasks done and making sure deadlines were met. And when I began to take that approach, things really began to change for me in my career. And I think sometimes that's where I do see folks run into, is they get bogged down in these mundane tasks. They've hit a certain level. Like for me, I had hit the controller level, which it created a comfortable space for where our family was at that point, but it wasn't 100% fulfilling for myself. And part of that was because I did not have the influence on the organization, and bring the think tank that was necessary to really make impactful change.
What was the biggest thing that you learned from that book that kind of helped you break through those walls?
Oh gosh, putting your self doubts aside. So let's go back to as being a parent stressing education, being a Division I athlete. You are always competing against yourself. You always feel that you have to be the absolute best of the best. And if you don't check every single box, you feel a little bit of uncertainty or so. And that's what I had to learn as well. Is like, you know what? You don't have to be perfect. I don't have to have every single answer. What's key is, can you be that person and that facilitator that can actually go get answers between much smarter people in the room, but be able to facilitate that, amongst headstrong individuals. And so for me, that was a huge takeaway, because it broke down the barriers that I had inside myself, to be able to really effectively communicate to other people, and also be able to bring strong-minded people together that may have different ideas, different approaches, and it definitely made me a better manager of people. Allowed me to even see myself as not trying to be perfect for my teams, but really look to see what do I need to offer to each of my team members to make us collectively better as a whole. And so that was the big takeaway that that I got from that particular book.
So maybe not necessarily Chris Crawley having to be the one that has all the answers, but how can I support my team and find the people that are best suited to help with this discussion and with this problem solving?
Absolutely. And part of that too, you have to step away. I would be hands-on, very, very much hands-on, and really kind of taking a step back so that you could actually see a larger picture and quarterback things. So, especially in those roles, one of the roles, when I was controller at Yoshinoya America, which was a company that was Japanese owned, and we had an international flavor there, which our team didn't necessarily, our team here in the U.S. didn't necessarily see eye to eye always with our Japanese counterparts and the owners there. I had to bridge those gaps, and in doing that, I had to understand really what are the needs of very high level, headstrong folks on both sides, and how do we come together to ensure that we are on the same page, so that we are satisfying the needs of our boards and being able to move our functions in unison.
So was it the time that you were at the Yoshinoya, the Japanese-owned company, that you first read this book, or had that come earlier?
It had come earlier. So
you were able to take those lessons that you had learned from before and apply them on a bigger scale.
Absolutely, because this was at the time as well where as you're sitting in a controllership role and you're trying to figure out how do you move forward, what next. There wasn't a pathway through at least for me through education. It was education. It wasn't a pathway how to maneuver through the business world, and really, like I said, I think the most important thing is being able to connect with people and build relationships. That really began to set me apart once I read the book and I understood that relationships were very big. Obviously, you have to have the technical piece, but your ability to bring people together, bring ideas together, and facilitate them, which I've been in the restaurant industry for many years. That's a difficult task when you have operations and then you have the other side of compliance, finance and accounting. You have folks that are interfacing guests and customers, and if something falls out of compliance, they're going to do that to ensure we satisfy the needs of customers. And then, but you have sometimes me as the bad guy putting in policy behind that. But being able to marry, those two worlds has been something that's difficult in our industry, in the restaurant industry. But I feel I've been successful in doing that over, more than a decade that I've spent in the industry.
What's an example of you having to be the bad guy?
So, one of the, obviously we operate here in California, or just the tipping process right now. With as far as our team members reporting tips, There has to be guidelines around that or so, and there's definitely policing that comes around that, and so I get it. I'm the bad guy when it comes to that, but when you look at ensuring that we're protecting the company and keeping the company, um, you know, above water as far as compliance, it's an area that has to be done. But you don't tackle this with an iron fist. I think a lot of this is communication and being very transparent as to the reasons why. And in our industry, that's what I feel is very important, that we're very transparent in what we do to our operators. If operators you cannot put reason behind something, then you have very, very little chance in getting a new task through new operators or through operators. And the interesting thing too is with operators as well is it's very, they in the restaurant industry, they do drive the business. That's it is not us as finance, accounting folks, the analysts. We give them information. However, these I do definitely respect. These are the folks that are on the front lines that really have a the knowledge of what is happening day in and day out.
So, as an auditor, you had a chance to work with a lot of different kinds of businesses. And as you mentioned, you've been in the restaurant space for a number of years. What is it that you really like about this space? And then how has that segued into the opportunity that you have now with Hoffman?
So I think you'll hear this from a lot of restaurant operators and executives. And I agree with it. It's the people. In the restaurant and hospitality industry, you have to be people focused. You have to understand your consumer base. You have to understand your team members. And for me, that definitely drives the connection. For me, I do enjoy making decisions that obviously positively impact people. And that definitely ties me to the restaurant industry where, I had operated in banking prior to that, public accounting. And there's an element of that, but it really, you don't necessarily have those connections with the people. Also too, it's in the restaurant industry, for the most part, there's an open book. We do converse with each other. We do share notes. At least in the circles that I'm networking in, we all kind of, we take the ups and the downs together in the industry.
So let's now, as we've kind of gotten through a little bit of your story, let's now explore what is the Hoffman Hospitality Group. Tell us about the different brands and maybe the common thread that sort of pulls them together.
Yep. Well, yeah. So Hoffman Hospitality Group, they've been owned and operated for just over 75 years by the Hoffman family. Brad Hoffman, who is fourth generation now, is president of our company, and Craig Hoffman sits as chairman of our board. Craig's grandfather started HHG as basically just a burger stand out on the beach at Long Beach. That morphed into Hoff's Hut, which is family. It's basically a family dining where it's pretty much American cuisine that we have, and currently right now we have 3 of those locations. But then Craig Hoffman, he decided to go in a whole different route in creating Lucille Smokehouse, which is totally different concept. And these are larger family dining locations that we have, anywhere from 8 to 10,000 square feet, where we actually have a smoker in the center of all of these restaurants that are actually smoking the meat. So it is 100% authentic here for the West Coast. And so we operate 24 of those locations throughout mostly Southern California, but we also have some outlying locations in Nevada and Arizona as well. So then we have the third concept, which is Saint and Second, which is completely different from the family dining experience. And this we kind of coin as a high-end casual dining. And this is where we obviously have chef-inspired dishes that are seasonal, a pretty robust specialty cocktail menu as well. And so this we cater to a lot of the kind of the folks that are looking for an experience, that are really coming for a dining experience, and so we're in the process right now of we have 3 locations currently right now, and that is our focus of growth, of really building upon this this concept of Saint and Second.
Why is that? Why is the Saint and Second sort of the primary focus at the moment?
So there are multiple reasons there. One of the focus as well is the customer demographic. It's a much higher end customer that we're focusing on. The locations that we look at, they're all kind of in the coastal cities here currently. But one of the advantages is we can operate out of a smaller box, or so less square footage. The price point is much higher, and it definitely gives us an advantage, when it comes to our prime costs in operating in this way. Also, too, with the new technologies that are coming in, we can operate this concept much more efficiently.
Oh, say more about that. What are some of the technology plays that are contributing to that efficiency?
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, on the back end, we've injected quite a few, whether they're labor modeling and forecasting tools that we can apply to a concept that's more straightforward. And what I mean by more straightforward than that is, with the barbecue concept, there are so many different segments of labor that are happening within running that operation. Whereas the Saint and Second model is a much more streamlined labor model than we have in either of our other concepts. Also, when you look at the really just in building out our new locations, we've been able to modernize a lot of our equipment that have more efficiencies within that equipment. But the build out as well, from a technology standpoint, we can create more efficiencies from an operating standpoint. Whereas in our other models, because our other concepts, a lot of the retrofit, it would create a lot of costs around build out to create different efficiencies, whether it's around, coolers, the beer systems that we put in. We've definitely been able to take advantage of the newer technology, and also space-saving technology that we have in the new concepts.
And so at Lucille's, for example, is it just much more labor intensive to smoke the meats, and just you kind of need like more people to produce the same amount of food?
Absolutely. So there's even a lot of prep work. All of the meats at Lucille's, we literally are hand seasoning every piece of meat of protein that goes into that smoker. So yes, there are a lot of hands involved from a labor side, and that's difficult to forecast as well, because it's not like you can take proteins in and smoke them in a few minutes and you're ready to serve. So it's even really getting to the point where you have to forecast your guest traffic and all this to ensure that you have one quality product, but then the right amounts of product available for the customer. And so this is it's a very difficult balance within that concept, and obviously with the the stresses of the costs, of running a 10,000 square foot restaurant with anywhere north of 150 to 175 employees that run that restaurant, and trying to fit that into California's labor market, it poses challenges. Luckily for us, we've been able to figure out a mix that works for our existing locations. However, in building that out, it just right now at this point doesn't make sense here in the Southern California area, for that Lucille's concept.
So say more about the labor challenges specifically in California at the moment, because this is something
Sure.
that people outside of the market maybe don't understand.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, everyone. Obviously, we had the fast food, minimum wage hike that we were not directly affected by because we did not operate the number of locations where we would be affected by it. However, we were indirectly affected because now all of our, back of the house, wages need to be competitive. One of the things for us too is the organization has been for the industry, we've been very successful in retaining our employees. We have quite a few, really tenured employees throughout all of our locations. And, we had to get creative in how to ensure that we could continue to, compensate these folks and not turn over big staffs because of how intricate our process is. And so that definitely led to challenges. But we have been able to find a mix, that has satisfied a lot of, our frontline help. And I think the other side of it too, though, what our organization has been, very, very, good at is driving the culture. So one of the things too, as well, when you're looking at, in our industry, whether it's 50 cents, maybe it could be a quarter difference in wage. Sometimes, especially in QSR, you get folks that leave for that difference in wage. The culture that we have created, I mean, that's what has really, I think, benefited the Hoffmans and the entire organization. I definitely saw that culture. That part of the culture is what led me back into my role in working with this group. But I believe that is really what drives a lot of that retention with our employees. But as we try to attract new team members on as well, we have to really continue to strengthen that culture and make sure that it's something that's felt as soon as a new team member walks into the door.
Can you say more from a practical standpoint what it looks like to implement, direct, foster that culture, especially when you've got so many locations spread out across a pretty good sized geography? What does that
Yep.
look like on a practical side?
Well, I mean, I can give you an example of exactly where it comes from, and this is it really early. It's tone at the top. I mean, our ownership group is very team member first. They take a team member first approach. It goes back to really, I think, the success that the Hoffman family has had over the 75 years. Their approach, they call them, the company is Hoffman Hospitality Group. We're not Hoffman or Hoffman Restaurants. It's hospitality first. But they take even a further step of that as well in also being hospitable to the team members. That was a big portion I empathize with, and even in my role, which is sometimes is a difficult role, especially when you're looking at right sizing organizations and those things. But I understood that right away that anytime we had to do something, any changes we made, it had to be team member first. Does this make sense for the team? How will this impact our teams? And so that's where it's easy because like there are even times too where we may sacrifice things that would drive bottom line to ensure that we're putting our team members, and team members even extend to some of our key vendors as well, to ensure that we're working in unison with our vendors. And so that is something that's very unique, from an ownership group. But that's really where the culture kind of starts, and it's very easy to implement all the way down to the next person that comes onto the team. Is it perfect? Does everybody latch onto this? Of course, you're going to have your anomalies, but I think that culture has definitely been built for many decades, within this organization.
Can you maybe mention a specific example, Chris, of a time where you did something that wasn't great for the bottom line just so that you could take better care of either your employees or your vendors?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there were times, obviously, first quarter last year, just for the industry in general, was a tough quarter. So we're looking through ways, we're going through the P&L, hey, well, how can we shave a point or two to our bottom line? And, I came up with some ideas. Some ideas were, you know, do we cut a linen service or so, and maybe cut back on some of the more hospitable things that we offer in our restaurants. And it would have driven a reasonable amount. It may have helped us pick up that half a point or point that we were looking to. But our ownership group decided not to take those stands because they didn't want to break relationships with their vendors, who they've had long time relationships with. There was a philosophy of, if we cut them short, we're going to pat ourselves, but we're going to cut someone else's bottom line short. In all my experience, prior to coming into HHG, I was in the private equity space. That's unheard of. It's absolutely unheard of. But when you talk about culture and how it is team member, vendor, people first, I mean, that there couldn't have been more of a straight answer early on that I got with that. So, but then also it makes things difficult as well, because sometimes you have to make those hard decisions and hard cuts. And I think that's where it's been a very good, balance between, some of the tough decisions that need to be made, but also the culture that our organization does have instilled in it.
That's an incredible story. Yeah, you're right. In my experience too, that kind of thing is virtually unheard of. I'm curious. Let's assume like I'm a new server starting with your organization, or I'm a line cook starting, and I've had experience working in other restaurants before. What's a difference that I might notice, my first day or couple of weeks on the job, as it pertains to the culture and how you treat team members?
Yeah. So one of the main things that our general managers are tasked with right away is, this notion of going above and beyond from a hospitality standpoint. It's how we, one, obviously treat our customers, but most importantly, how we treat our new team members. Obviously, too, in certain roles, you have folks that are, this may be their first job or so that they've taken, or maybe it's their first time in full service. We tend to really try to set our folks up to be successful in their roles and what they're doing. And part of that is really, we're kind of still old school, where our general managers are literally taking their teams, and we have lineups before every single shift, where they go through and check in individually with each of our team members. And that's also new folks that have come on board. And, that I think is really something that drives the, or at least when our new team members come on, that gives them that sense of, okay, I'm actually going to be supported here. and also I think communication. We're communicating to them exactly, what we're looking for them to achieve on day one and day 1,000. So,
Chris, what is athletes touch and why has this become so important to you?
so it obviously it's an organization that focuses in helping college students transition or college athletes transition into the workforce. Obviously, it touches home for me because I was that person. I was an athlete in college without necessary direction, and even at that time, didn't really have anyone to speak with on how to transition and how do I look at life. And so, this is a great thing that I'm able to do and it's to speak with a lot of college athletes, and these are athletes across the board. Not these are tennis players, field hockey players that are transitioning out of a college sport and into the workforce, and really it's an easy discussion for me because I can tell my story and tell and give insight on what it's like to make those transitions and through my experiences, um, you know, really help lead people in that transition.
Is this something that happens like on a one-on-one basis? Are you sort of speaking to teams and groups? How does that look?
It varies. It varies. Sometimes it is in group settings. A lot of times too, it's we even have get-togethers of folks that have actually transitioned. They're working, but they were athletes, and we get together to really kind of share our stories and kind of connect in ways that is unique to anyone that had that experience in college.
Do you find, this is maybe a gross generalization, but that college athletes once they're able to sort of make that transition, that they make really good employees because of the work ethic that they had to instill in themselves at a very young age? Or is it sort of the opposite, where they kind of need to learn how to be at a desk and follow responsibilities and take orders? What's been your general experience?
No, so I have been fortunate to hire college athletes, and I actually feel um, they actually come in right away with a lot of the skill sets that are necessary to succeed, not only in business, in life in general, and they tend, for me, in my experience with the folks that I have hired, have made excellent um, eh, team members. And as far as the sorry about that, Anthony. Gosh, okay. Hopefully you can edit that. Is there any way we can start that over?
Yeah. What was
I
the last
apologize.
question that I asked?
I apologize. That
Oh,
so
yeah.
so it's
No,
the team
no, no
the
worries.
team members. Uh,
So, so I'm curious, Chris. What's your experience been? I could see this kind of going one of two directions with athletes entering the workforce. One is that they are, well accustomed to, a strong work ethic because that's what was required for, to get them to the level of success that they had. Um, and so that they make really great employees right from the outset. The other side could be that, they're used to playing a game and they're not accustomed to sort of sitting down in a more structured work environment, and so that's a more difficult transition for them to experience. What do you see?
yeah. So in my experience, I have welcomed the resumes of athletes because I feel that they do come in with a discipline right away. The experience of any person who is dedicated to a sport at the collegiate level has had to go above and beyond what the normal task of of just going to class is. So that always is a positive. Very rarely, too, that I think that's the misnomer. I mean, anyone that's going to sit in front of me for a finance and accounting job, that has gone through the rigors of the education for it, along with being an athlete, very rarely are you going to run into the attitude of I'm an athlete, so you owe me something at all. Everyone understands how to come in and fight for a position, a space there. There's that level of competition that isn't amongst others. It's I really feel within themselves. They don't want to let themselves down, and I feel that it makes a nice mix when you do have somebody with that type of background coming into the workforce.
I can see that. Chris, I'd be interested to hear about a serious challenge that you've overcome in your life, whether it's business, personal, maybe a combination of the two. What was it like getting through that, and what were some lessons that you learned?
Sure. You know, I'm going to keep this. How we started. It was sports. So the challenge for me was really being recruited, going to, I was recruited to multiple universities, being wanted at that time, and getting to the stage and realizing that, I mean, for lack of better words, you just weren't good enough. It's something, and probably, you talk to a lot of athletes that sticks with them in some way for the rest of their lives. When you've done something at such a high level, but you didn't quite get to the finishing top, that is it's a difficult thing to keep mentally. But what it has done is it keeps a I've turned that in energy, and that's why I talk with a lot of the athletes that are transitioning. I've been able to take that energy and turn that into more motivation. But they're daunting days where you doubt yourself when you've achieved at such a high level and you're unable to get to that next level. It creates a level of doubt, or you start going back and thinking, what did I do wrong? How could I have been better? There's different ways that folks look at that, but for me, it was more so I doubted myself. You realize, okay, physically I was unable to do certain things, even mentally. I wasn't able to compete at the top level. And so that was a huge challenge, and mentally it's very difficult to get over. But then it's kind of like when you have those challenges, it's an easy today. It's much easier to look at it because just like before, I realized, like I mentioned before, you don't have to be perfect. Nothing has to be perfect. And I think as you're an athlete and trying to go to the next level or become a professional, you feel that everything has to be perfect. So that was a huge challenge, and like I said, it still remains a challenge to this very day. Here I am, 30 years removed, and you still think to yourself, okay, how do I get to that next challenge? But even for myself today, where I'm at, I is just another. There's a challenge to myself to take the next step. Let's how can I influence and do things even further, whether it's with my current organization or whether it's my community or any other things. There's always that drive to ascend to take another step.
It's so interesting, sort of how we're wired as human beings, that we're always looking for the next thing, and why am I stuck here? Why am I not here? Whether it's in athletics, whether it's in sports, finance, the business world, etc. You attained a certain level of success in your athletic career, right? You got to Division I college baseball, but what you do is you don't appreciate where you've come from and everything that you've accomplished. You're despondent about what you weren't able to kind of accomplish at the next level. And for myself personally, when I find myself in a thought process like that, I get hard on myself and I doubt myself and like, why is this my ceiling? And, why can't I get to here? And what I've come to realize, and I'm curious to get your take on this, Chris, is that that's actually a little bit healthy. As long as that negative voice doesn't get too loud, that is what is pushing us to want to achieve more and push ourselves to greatness, is sort of um, that self-doubt and why can't I do more? Why am I here? Why can't I be there? How does all that resonate with you?
No, it definitely resonates, and that is absolutely a part of what drives me. In your, I completely agree with you. It's really trying to quell that voice. That voice does need to be tamed, or so. But to the point that you make, you do need to look back at your successes, and that's one of the things that I had a very difficult time doing. Is taking a second just to pat myself on the back or so to say, you know what, hey, there was an accomplishment here, because you're constantly looking ahead, but I do agree, and I feel that it's drive that you need motivation somehow or some way. I'm a huge proponent of that. I think how you have to create motivation. I would laugh. I look like, I think there were stories of like Michael Jordan where he would just make up these rivalries and things to motivate him. Well, for me too, I think even in business and trying to get to the next level, trying to do something else, to be more impactful, is what motivates me, and having that voice inside of you that doesn't allow for complacency and comfort. There was a quote I saw where comfort is the no progress zone. I subscribe to that. I'm definitely one of those folks that subscribe to that, and just continuously improving and getting better. And unfortunately, or fortunately, when you have experiences like I had, and you have that competitiveness as an athlete, like I said, it sticks with you all the way through.
Chris, I've just got one more question for you, but before I ask it, I want to do two things. For everyone listening today, I know that you love today's content. Chris has been an amazing guest. Please hit the follow button on your favorite podcast app to continue receiving great content like this. Also, if you want to keep following Chris, if you want to get in touch with him, there's a couple things you can do. There's the hoffmangroup.com website, and Hoffman is spelled with one F, Hoffman group.com. You can also email Chris directly at Crawley, so that's CCRAWLEY at hoffmangroup.com. So now, Chris, the last question I've got for you, as you look to the future, either in your industry at large or more specifically the Hoffman Group, what changes and evolutions are you most excited about coming around the corner?
Oh, we are doing quite a few things. Obviously, over at HHG, we're out of the box. Just with our concepts, just all the different things that we're doing. But one of the things I'm really excited about is the new direction that we're taking with the branding of our Satan Second. This is for everyone, creating a lot of excitement. We're really trying to begin to market in our local areas where we're opening. Currently, right now as well, we're opening a brand new location in Manhattan Beach. This is for anyone here in Southern California on the West Coast. It's a prime location. Manhattan Beach. It's a gorgeous area, great place, and we have a main location there. So this is kind of a flagship for us, and also too, what it does is this is a catalyst for us to really, build something, this concept. So obviously now it gives me something to go and begin to try to develop and scale this out, to a much larger audience. So that's definitely on high on our task list for this year. Really just pushing this brand forward and trying to ensure that we can touch as many people out there to let them know that we are completely going in we are not just the barbecue company, but we also have a different flavor for a different audience as well, and a different experience within our restaurant group.
And this new location, will it be the first one that has a lot of these sort of new operational efficiencies baked in that we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, so the unique part of this location that we're building in Manhattan Beach, this will be a location that we're actually building from ground up. The other locations, they've been conversions of restaurants and buildings that we have run in the past. So yes, this will be the first location that we kind of built out organically and exactly to spec on how our ownership's vision of this concept looks like.
Well, Chris, I want to be the first one to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it as well, Anthony. It was a great to be a part of the Inspired Story podcast.
Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.